What's good, everybody? Joe Nice, live and direct as usual on a March 8th, 2020. Let me try that again. Take two. What's good, everybody? Joe Nice coming to you as always, live and direct on a March 8th, 2021. March 8th, 2021. March 8th, 2021. Today is International Women's Day. I want to say, first and foremost, before we begin the proceedings, thank you to all of the women around the world. Most specifically, I want to thank my mom and my daughter, because quite honestly, those are the two women I'm closest to the most. There's many other women that are doing wonderful things around the world, and I know I will continue to make an effort to highlight and share their stories and make sure their voices are heard. A perfect example of me and women is the Jolly Cat Chat series. Take a look at that. Cam Wells and I have weekly conversations where we discuss issues that affect humanity, freedom, equality, and survival. It was just 2 weeks ago we discussed women in music. On tomorrow's edition of the Joe and Cat Chat series, we will discuss influential women as part of International Women's Day, which is today. It's a shame we couldn't record today, but scheduling conflicts and issues come up. So we're going to record that tomorrow. You can watch that live here at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on Facebook.com/JoeNiceDJ, YouTube.com/JoeNiceDJ. And we will stream that live on the Tastemakers Radio station on the Dash Radio Network, dashradio.com/Tastemakers Radio. Don't want to take up too much of your time today because I have some other issues that I want to take care of and some other things that I need to take care of today in preparation for some podcasts and other episodes that I'll be recording later this week. As previously said, Joe and Cat Chats tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Fear and Loving on tomorrow night. Myself, Rue Johnson, Chris Foltz, Cat Wells, Main Man Ranch, and we will have a special guest. The name of the special guest escapes me right now. I'd have to dig and look at my phone, but we're going to talk about reforming institutions, the dissolution of institutions. We're going to talk about how to reform the cultural institutions that make up society. It's going to be a rather interesting episode and an interesting conversation across the board. So we're going to have that tomorrow. Take a look at my Facebook and my Instagram for more information about the times and where to watch that. Where you can watch it is at the Real Fear and Loving website and the Real Fear and Loving Facebook page and YouTube. Real Fear and Loving. So youtube.com, Real Fear and Loving, facebook.com, Real Fear and Loving. And that is tomorrow night. And I think that is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 8 p.m. I can't remember exactly, but we'll talk about that later on. Also, sometime later this week, I'm going to be on my main man Jackson Hinkle's podcast on his YouTube show called The Dive. I was there about a month ago discussing Section 1881 Alpha of the Social Security Act and how that can be used to give everybody in the United States healthcare coverage. I'm going to be talking about some of the news of the day on Jackson's show, and I'm also going to be discussing the yellow vest and black vest movements that are taking place in Paris right now. For the French-speaking folk or the Francophone-speaking folk who are watching right now, the Gilets jaunes or the Gilets noirs, and how those types of protest movements are needed in the United States to fight for the rights of the working class in America. Yellow vest and black vests. So we're going to talk about that in detail. If you want a bit of a primer for some of what we've talked about, or at least what I've talked about regarding the yellow vest and black vests in France, you can take a listen to episode number 17 of the Joe and Cat Chat series. I think it was episode number 17. I can take a quick look for you here. I think it was episode number 17 of the Joe and Cat Chat series, where we discussed Capitalism in the Human Development Index, and the beginning portion of that conversation involved a robust discussion about France, their colonialism, and the yellow vest and the black vest movements and their purpose. But tomorrow, the conversation that Jackson and I will have later this week will be considerably more in depth, and we're going to make the case as to why America, Canada, France, and other countries that are having issues regarding the rights of workers and the working class should be in the streets wearing yellow vests and black vests, and these protests should be continuing nonstop until the governments of these particular countries do the will and the bidding of the people, not the 1%. For months, I've been calling for generalized worker strikes across these United States. They have not happened yet. We need them to happen, and we need them to happen now. You're probably like, well, Joe, why are you saying this again? Shut the hell up about this. We've already heard you talk about this. And I'm going to continue to talk about it because we need change in this country. The latest stimulus bill was passed over this past weekend, and the Democrats had complete control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. And the Democrats somehow negotiated themselves into a worse bill than was originally proposed. Joe Biden, 3 months ago, said $2,000 checks will go out immediately. Where are they? Still waiting. Then it was, $2,000, psych, $1,400. Where's that? Still waiting. $400 a week that will provide a bridge to help the American people. Somehow it's now $300. And then they further means tested to make sure that fewer people get an opportunity to take in the $300 unemployment benefits, the federal unemployment benefits increase. Democrats negotiated with themselves and somehow lost the debate and lost the negotiation. Only the Democrats could do this. Only the Democrats could do this. And if the Republican Party weren't such ghouls, I guarantee the Republican Party would not negotiate against themselves to make a bill even worse than what they could possibly present. Oh, and lo and behold, when we had a Republican in the White House, namely Donald Trump, and the Republicans controlled the Senate and the Democrats controlled the House, the Republican Party proposed a bill that was significantly better than this stimulus bill. $1,400 checks, $400 a week unemployment, retroactive to the end of the CARES Act. And Nancy Pelosi didn't take it. She ends up taking a smaller bill that's half the value of the bill that was originally proposed by the White House. And then she comes back and says, hey, well, look, we now have control of the House and the Senate. We're going to come up with a better stimulus package that's going to be a down payment for all of the months that have been missed as a result of essentially the government screwing around with the people. I have a terrible feeling that this down payment that we're getting, which is this stimulus package that was passed on Sunday morning, is the only payment. I have a feeling this down payment is the only payment. I don't think we're getting another stimulus package after this one. How? With what? This was the government's chance. This was the Democrats' chance to actually do what they said they were going to do, which was bold, transformative action. Bold action. Their idea of bold action was only being marginally better than what the Republicans offered 7 or 8 months ago. And in many cases, it's actually worse. Now, granted, there's much of this new stimulus package does not go to corporations. It goes to families and to individuals, which is good, but it's not enough support for the individual. And for all the people in Congress, the progressives, the squad, that were saying, hey, $15 minimum wage, $15. A $15 minimum wage was inadequate 10 years ago when activists were fighting for $15 an hour as a minimum wage. It was inadequate a decade ago. Inflation is gone. Inflation obviously has increased. Everything has gone up in terms of price, but hourly wages have not. There's plenty of literature dictating that if the minimum wage was adjusted for salary, for worker productivity and cost of inflation, the minimum wage should be, depending on what state you're in, on an average $24 to $27 an hour. And in some cases, the minimum wage should probably be higher than that in some states. For example, a state like Hawaii, which is the most expensive state to live in the United States for, quite honestly, obvious reasons, cost of transport and importing goods, etc. The minimum wage in Hawaii should be over $30 an hour. A state I grew up in, Maryland, which has a high cost of living. The minimum wage in Maryland, I remember reading this not too long ago, the minimum wage in Maryland should be something like $30 or $31 an hour in order to be able to afford a one-bedroom apartment and have all your other expenses taken care of. In Hawaii, it was something like $33 or $34 an hour. So the fact that we're fighting for $15 an hour and $15 was the compromise and we couldn't get the compromise says everything you need to know about the political impotence of the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats. Everybody. We needed more than 15. The fight, quite honestly, should have been for 25. Realistically, the fight should have been for 30. Let's fight for 30. Then negotiate your way down. And maybe we'll go negotiate something that's maybe even better than 15, like 17 or 18. The worst part about it is Joe Biden said, hey, yeah, $15 an hour, I support that. But when it came time to actually do something about it, he did nothing. Nothing. What I'm also concerned about today is the beginning of the Derek Chauvin trial in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've just read recently that the jury selection has been delayed because Derek Chauvin's attorneys want to appeal the third-degree murder charge, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was third-degree murder charge. They want to appeal it. Supposedly, that jury selection is going to take at least a week, maybe longer. There is a reporter, an independent reporter named Georgia Fort. She's doing some excellent work in Minneapolis. And she filmed a video not too long ago showing how the area around the Hennepin County Courthouse in downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota, is essentially full of security. Jersey walls, barbed wired fence for a 7 or 8 block radius around the courthouse. Now, and many of the businesses in that area are boarded up. Now, why would you need to go ahead and protect all of these businesses and put up all this security if Derek Chauvin wasn't going to jail? None of this makes sense. This is eerily reminiscent of the Breonna Taylor verdict. And then 3 days before, the governor of Kentucky, the mayor of Louisville, and the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron went ahead and said, we are going to go ahead and protect our city. We're going to have all hands on deck before we read out this verdict. I'm telling you, I am worried. I'm concerned that Derek Chauvin's going to walk. Why would you have all this done ahead of time if you were going to put him in jail? I'm worried. And the other three officers that were involved in the murder of George Floyd, their trial doesn't begin until August. So they've all been removed from their police force. They've all been fired. We shall see. We shall see what happens. But justice needs to be served. And we are coming up on March 13th. March 13th is a year since Breonna Taylor was killed. March 13th, I think, is Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. It's Saturday. So we're coming up on a year since Breonna Taylor. Last thing I wanted to discuss before I get out of here and get some other stuff done is, I did not watch this interview. I don't have time to watch 2-hour interviews anytime, anywhere, any place. But I saw people discussing the Prince Harry and Meghan Markle interview with Oprah Winfrey. And my thoughts on it are, why are people surprised? Why are people shocked? Why are people shocked? Are people legitimately surprised and shocked that the royal family has racism floating in their veins? Really? Are people surprised by this? Are people shocked by this? Look at what happened when Prince Harry married Meghan. The British press was in a frenzy. Oh my God, he's marrying somebody black. And Meghan, I think, is biracial, if I'm not mistaken. So, oh my God, what are we going to do? We have black people in the royal family. They've never had black people in the royal family at all. Why are people surprised by this? The royal family has been rooted in racism. Kat and I discussed this in the colonialism episode. Look how many countries England colonized across the world. And it was only within the past, realistically, 60 years that many of these countries that were former British colonies gained their independence from England. Look how many of these countries around the world. Look at the Windrush situation that took place in 2018 in England. And how many people were involved in the Windrush situation all of a sudden no longer had British citizenship or the right to live in England. And I think it was 65 countries that were former colonies of England that were involved in the Windrush scheme. And it wasn't just 65 countries, oh, hey, there's a bunch in Africa. No, this was all over the world. All over the world. Yes, there were some in Africa. A bunch of it was in the Caribbean. A bunch of these countries were in the Caribbean. And there were Southeastern Asian countries involved also. India was one of them. Pakistan was another. So I'm not sure why people are surprised by this at all, that there's racism in the royal family. Why are people surprised by this? Look at what happened with Prince Harry's mother, Princess Diana. Princess Diana was engaged to Dodi Al-Fayed. Dodi Al-Fayed's family owned a large department store called Harrods in London. At one point, the Al-Fayed family were the principal owners of Fulham Football Club, a team that plays in a small stadium known as Craven Cottage on the shores of the River Thames in the West End of London. If you know anything about the geography of London, or the socioeconomic, socio-political geography of London, the West End of London is one of the most expensive and affluent areas in the world, bar none. And Fulham is right there. Fulham's right there. Stamford Bridge, where Chelsea Football Club plays their football, is not too far away. And Queen's Park Rangers, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the name of QPR's football club. QPR is around the corner. Chelsea Football Club is owned by Roman Abramovich, who's one of the richest men in Russia and one of the richest men in the world. He's got a net worth of about $15 billion. QPR, which is playing in the championship or the first division of English football, is owned by Tony Fernandez, who I think is a Malaysian business person who owns Air Asia. He owns 2/3 of the club. The other 1/3 of the club is owned by Lakshmi Mittal. Lakshmi Mittal is a steel manufacturer, and his company, Mittal Steel, owns an overwhelming share of the steel manufacturing infrastructure and market in not only the United Kingdom, but in Europe. Lakshmi Mittal has a house on Billionaires Row in London. And that's also in the West End of London. So just to give you an idea of what you're dealing with. Dodi Al Fayed's family was of Middle Eastern descent. Prince Harry and Dodi, I'm sorry, not Prince Harry, Princess Diana and Dodi Al Fayed were engaged to get married. All of a sudden, she dies in a car accident. All the international humanitarian work she's done and nothing ever happened to her, but she's driving through a tunnel in London and all of a sudden she dies in a car accident. Why do you think that happened? That happened because the royal family, or the quote unquote firm that Harry and Meghan discussed, didn't want anybody who was a person of color being involved in the royal family. Even if that person who was going to be a potential member of the royal family had lots of money and status and political connections internationally. Royal family wanted no parts of that. So the royal family wanted no parts of a man who was from the Middle East, who had money and political clout and status. What do you think they were going to do with a biracial girl who had none of the aforementioned and who was in love with the Queen's grandson? And people are clutching their pearls saying, oh my God, how could the royal family be racist? And I'll submit to you and I'll ask the question to you, how could they not be racist? How could you not see this? How could you not see this? All right, I said all I wanted to say for today. I'll post this video on all my other outlets. You'll see it. All right? Again, happy Women's Day.